Hey guys, welcome to Fanfic Fanatics. So in today's video we are gonna see what if Deku got a mysterious letter by Secret Lover movie. This story is My Secret Lover in Valentine's Day by the respected author Crow Heart. Make sure to show some love to their work. Before starting, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Here's a short summary. Izuku Midoriya has never liked Valentine's Day, but in his second year at UA a mysterious letter appears on his seat. Follow Midoriya in the search of his secret lover. Now let's get to the story. February 14th had arrived and for the students of UA love was in the air. Izuku was walking through the corridors of the school, going to the infamous 2A classroom, while he watched as several girls delivered chocolates to their crushes, sometimes generating a new relationship or just one more broken heart. The boy sighed, remembering his days in elementary school. He hadn't been lucky in the love department. The only time he had managed to work up the courage to confess his feelings, he fell for a rather elaborate prank by his former classmates. I remembered it as if only a day had passed and not 2 years. Ran Furukawa had appeared out of nowhere. In one of his many expeditions to find heroes, he had met a beautiful girl who left him fascinated, not only because of her quirk that replaced her hair with purple clouds that descended like a waterfall, but also because she greeted him, the pariah of the whole city. After that meeting, they exchanged contacts and she promised that she would contact him in a few hours. Izuku didn't want to get excited, but to his surprise the girl hadn't lied and they both started talking. That friendship managed to grow for a few months, in which Izuku confessed to her some of his darkest problems and thoughts in search of comfort. He realized that he had fallen in love with the girl the day they both went to watch a movie. Near the end of his elementary school days, a couple of days before Kachan told him to jump off the roof, Furukawa had told him to meet on a bridge near the school. Izuku, all the way, began to think about the reasons why she wanted to see him and why she was so cryptic with her message. Did she no longer want him to be her friend? Or could it be that his fantasies could be real? However, when he reached the bridge he was ambushed by a group of his usual bullies, who held him against the railing of the bridge, just allowing him to see how Ran was laughing along with some girls. "Did you seriously think that I wanted to be friends with a parasite like you?" Just as he tried to say something, the young woman's gaze turned cold. "No one will ever fall in love with you, Deku. Don't forget where you belong. You don't deserve love." Her words were burned into his psyche. He couldn't catch on as Ran ordered the boys to throw him off the bridge. He didn't feel the impact of his body in the cold water. He just stood there, floating as he watched how his first love had broken his heart. A bitter taste came to Izuku's mouth as he remembered that moment. He didn't have time to grieve. He was going to be a hero and he couldn't waste time in any romantic relationship. Besides, who, in his right mind, would want him to be his partner? Well, the chocolate and the letter left on his table said otherwise. The looks that Mina, Denki and, probably, Toru were giving him had brought a blush to the boy's face as he approached his seat. "So, Midoriya, are you going to see who left you that letter?" asked the blonde, still maintaining the mischievous smile of the group. Swallowing, Izuku opened the envelope and read the contents to himself. "Dear Izuku Midoriya, there are no words in the world that a girl can properly use to express what you mean to me. Your courage, determination, but above all your smile, along with your drive to help people, dazzled me. You probably don't feel the same way I do, but I couldn't bear to keep these feelings to myself anymore. I love you, Izuku. Since that day I have loved you. I hope you enjoy the chocolates that I prepare with all my love for you. P.S. Don't try to find me, your secret lover." "Oh, shit," the boy muttered, causing a surprised gasps from everyone in the classroom. How could this whole situation be real? Does anyone love him? No, this has to be a joke, he thought as he sat down and opened the box of chocolates. After seeing it, he was surprised at how well made the chocolates were, and when he tasted one he almost melted in his seat. This is no joke, he thought, panic beginning to quickly invade his body. There is too much work behind this for it to be a joke. Besides, how did she know I liked mint chocolate? Aizawa had already reached the classroom, so everyone had already returned to their seats, but Izuku couldn't pay attention to his teacher's lecture. He was too occupied trying to find out who had made that confession. Without anyone noticing, a girl in his class was looking at him wistfully while a slight blush graced his face. When Aizawa's class ended, he went to his teacher and asked, "Aizawa-sensei, there's cameras in the classroom." The man glared at Midoriya with his single eye before sighing, "No problem, child. Why do you ask?" Nothing important, sensei," the nervous boy said, ignoring his teacher's snort. He knew it was an unlikely option, but there was nothing to lose in asking. "What do you have there, Deku-kun?" Uraraka appeared next to him, scaring him to death. Nothing. Uraraka-san." The girl seemed to question that statement, but she simply smiled with her blush a little more profuse than normal. "Deku-kun. Did you like your gift?" Midoriya looked in complete shock at her best friend. Was it Uraraka? It had a bit of sense, don't get him wrong. She had been one of the few girls in his class that he had interacted with the most, so it was a bit logical, but it couldn't have been her. The last time Uraraka had tried to cook, she had set a frying pan on fire and almost managed to completely burn down the dorms. What gift?" the boy asked. Uraraka chuckled slightly as she slapped his back. "I left you a new notebook. You said you were running out of notebooks, and yesterday I found out that I had one to spare." A little more relieved, the boy smiled and thanked his friend's gesture before quickly leaving the classroom. He went to lock himself in a bathroom since he didn't want anyone to see what he was going to do and think he was a pervert or something. He carefully removed the letter from its envelope and held it up to his nose. The first time he read it, he had felt a fragrance that was not normal on paper. It might be one of those skills he wasn't very proud of possessing, but he was very good at recognizing people's scents. For example, he usually recognized Bakugo by his smell of smoke and chili because of his quirk and diet. He recognized Uraraka by the smell of cheap coconut fragrance. Todoroki used to wear a lot of lime lemon perfume. Yaoyorozu was the most refined and had a soft fruity fragrance that he couldn't quite tell what it was. There was also Hagakuri's signature vanilla-scented fragrance, while Ishido wore a strawberry bubblegum perfume. He could recognize the others too, but they were usually flat with their choice of colonies. He thought his level of attention to his classmates was quite disturbing, but at least for once, that ability would come in handy. "Damn," he muttered, unable to recognize any of his classmates. It was a different scent, and it was a little disturbed by the smell of mint chocolate. He read the letter again, hoping to find something that might tell him who wrote it, but it was so ambiguous. He only had a clue that they spoke for the first time at Ua. The boy brought his hands to the head and began to scratch his hair as he growled in frustration. The girl didn't want him to find her, but her feelings deserved an answer, and Izuku would give it to her. Almost having dropped the letter on the wet bathroom floor, the green-haired boy noticed a strange mark on the back of the letter. It was the marks of a kiss with pink lipstick. Going to the dining room, Midoriya met his classmates as they chatted about common things, while he had the mission of comparing all the lips of his classmates with those of the letter. "So, Yaomomo, did you give someone chocolates?" Kyoka asked as she smiled mischievously. Yaoyorozu blushed like a tomato as he mumbled, "I don't think that's something you should ask." "Come on, Yaoyorozu-san, we all helped Kaminari last year with Jiro. I'm sure we can help you too," Shiro said as he munched on his food. "I'm sure Todoroki will say yes, I've seen him look at you," added Mina. Midoriya surreptitiously stared at Momo's lips. Somehow they matched, thick enough to leave a mark like the one on the letter, but she wasn't the only who had the exact type of lips. From one moment to the next, Ishido crossed the table trying to annoy Momo, letting Midoriya feel all of her chest against him. "Calm down, Izuku Midoriya," he repeated to himself while he blushed when he saw the position the pink girl was in. "I'm sorry, Midori. At least you enjoyed the show." Muttering something that no one understood, Midoriya hid his face in his notebook that he had started with his research. He had ruled out those who were already in a relationship or who, due to gender issues, did not add up. The letter was written entirely from a female perspective, so it was safe to rule out boys, while Jiro was in a stable relationship with Kaminari, so she wasn't a candidate either. Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, Asui, Ishido, and Hagakuri were still candidates. "Won't I be able to find a love story again? We are 1 year away from prom and everyone is so negative about it," Ishido complained. "Why so much interest in the romantic life of others, Mina-chan, Ribbit?" Suyu asked. "Look at me guys, do you think someone will notice me with this skin?" "You are beautiful in your own way, Ishido-san," Midoriya said, setting his notebooks completely aside. Mina's face began to turn purple, so she tried to hide it by mocking the boy. Hey, are you proposing something to me, Midori? I'm serious. Each and every one of you is beautiful in your own unique style. You shouldn't let what others say get to you. Even more than your appearances, everyone's personalities are worthy of someone's love. The entire dining room fell silent. Just in those seconds the young hero began to blush furiously and hid his face in his notebook. I didn't know you were a sweet talker, Midoriya-chan. Asui's usually stoic face had an unusual blush as she smiled. On her side, Shiro had to catch Uraraka before she reached the ceiling of the dining room. Yaoyorozu covered her mouth with her hands, looking completely surprised, and Hagakure was completely silent, without making any movement. After that situation, Izuku hit his head with his hand. He was already tired and was thinking of giving up. It was almost time for the last class of the day and he hadn't discovered any useful clue that could really tell him who had written the letter. At least that's what he thought until his eyes noticed a certain detail in one of his classmates. He was the last one left in the room. Everyone had run to change clothes since they had a heroics exercise. Izuku took that opportunity to slip a note into one of the bags before quickly running to the locker room. Izuku was freezing as he waited at a streetlight near Ua. After leaving the letter in Yaoyorozu's bag, he received a message from her telling him that her parents had called her for an important meeting. The boy suspected that there was something strange with Yaoyorozu's way of speaking, so he quickly called All Might to ask some favors and then Shoto and Kachan so they could help him choose a suitable outfit. Hercules, All Might's special vehicle, stopped in front of him with the tires skidding slightly on the asphalt. That car underwent a couple of modifications after being rebuilt, and among them was an extra row of seats in the back to better suit average use. Young Midoriya, this favor of yours is something unusual, to say the least, All Might said, opening Hercules' door so the boy could enter. I know, that's why I thank you, All Might, the boy said, fixing the green tie on his suit. So, are you going to tell me what is so important that involves the young Yaoyorozu? Asked the retired hero, winking at the green-haired young man, making him blush. I had a bad feeling when I talked to her. She almost looked like she was saying goodbye to UA. Oh, was all Might said before stepping on the accelerator, surprising Izuku. Then we better not keep her waiting, isn't it, my boy? Of course. When they arrived, Izuku was surprised to see a bunch of people gathered in a room. All Might was going to wait for him at Hercules until it was time to leave, so Izuku quickly began his mission. Within that sea of rich people, it was easy for Izuku to recognize the people who were within the world of heroism. The president of the HPSC, Endeavor, some heroes who used his image to promote their companies, and one or another CEO of support gear companies, people who were mostly there only for commitment and appearances more than for pleasure, but there was no signs of Yaoyorozu. It was then that a spotlight illuminated a stage and a young man with an unpleasant attitude came up. Welcome everyone. Tonight the reason for celebration is me? The man made a much more exaggerated pose than Aoyama usually does and everyone applauded him. And also my future wife, Lady Yaoyorozu. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw Yaoyorozu on the side of the stage wearing a beautiful red dress. Next to her were her parents who, although they were good at hiding it, Midoriya could clearly see that they were sad. Momo frowned when she felt the man's filthy touch on her bare shoulder. It was a bad calculation by her father. Despite being an investment genius, sometimes people forget that he is also human and makes mistakes. This time it was a serious one that made him lose a lot of investors' money, which caused that unfortunate man to take the opportunity to ask for his hand as compensation. He didn't know how that stupidity was accepted, but here she was, being displayed like a trophy by a miserable man. I'm sorry, my child, her father apologized with his head lowered. There are no words to tell you how much I regret that damn deal. Father, I don't blame you, please don't worry anymore. It is my responsibility as a father to ensure your happiness, and the only thing I did was condemn it, the man murmured, only to be hugged by his wife. Momo's mother also gave her a look that showed all the regret she felt for her. Momo just smiled as best she could to reassure her. Then her mind wandered again. If only it was Izuku who was next to her. He was a gentleman, always polite, being careful when dealing with girls and respecting boundaries. Not looking at her because of her appearance or her last name. To him she was just Momo, the UA student. Not like that guy. God, it was already the second time he tried to touch her ass in public. Doesn't he know that she could kick his ass if she wasn't bound by those cursed contracts? Her mind returned to that young man with green hair that she missed so much. While she wasn't going to leave Ua, her chance of having him as a partner was slipping through her fingers like sand in a desert. All those common room reading sessions they used to have wouldn't be the same. That peace and satisfaction she felt every time he praised the tea she prepared for both of them. All that lost by, Momo had to put her hands up to her eyes and rub them to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. To her surprise, the one she was longing for was standing in the crowd with a heavenly smile. "Why?" the girl murmured, tears threatening to come out against her will. Almost as if the green-haired young man had heard her, his lips moved, pronouncing a couple of words before putting a chocolate in his mouth. She recognized those sweets as well as his words, and in the end the tears began to fall. Hey, don't ruin the makeup," the man next to her whispered, grabbing her shoulder roughly. "Enjoy this while you can," Momo responded defiantly. Despite everything, she had no idea about what Izuku had planned to get her out of there, but she trusted him completely. Time passed and a legal representative came on stage to begin the legal arrangements for the marriage. The guy was so desperate that he decided to do everything immediately without even preparing a proper ceremony. Yaoyorozu's father was seething with rage as he watched the man greedily sign the papers. He then handed the pen to Yaoyorozu. "It's now or never, Izuku," she thought, closing her eyes and delaying the signing as long as she could. "Hold on," a voice shouted in the crowd, making everyone turn to see who it was. Momo simply smiled. "I oppose this union." "Who said that?" The people little by little gave way for Izuku to approach and go up on stage, facing the other young man. "I did it," Izuku said firmly, looking directly into his eyes. "I am not going to stay silent seeing how you treat the woman I love like a trophy." A vein on the millionaire's forehead looked like it wanted to burst as Izuku brushed past him and brought one knee to the ground in front of Momo's parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Yaoyorozu, I have been in love with your daughter for a long time, but I never had the courage to say it. It was only now that I was able to gather the courage to confess thanks to the beautiful gift your daughter prepared. That's why I want to ask for your blessing so that she can be my girlfriend." Wait a minute, Midoriya-kun, Yaoyorozu exclaimed with her face red as the dress she was wearing while she tried to approach the boy. Don't say those things suddenly." The girl's parents watched in surprise as things were developing, not really knowing what to do. "How dare you? Who are you to dare interfere here? Do you know that they are fulfilling a contract, and if they don't they will lose everything?" Izuku remained silent. Thanks to the lighting of the place, his eyes seemed to be shadowed until the green electricity that characterized the full cowl began to emanate from his body. I'm Izuku Midoriya, the son of All Might, and that contract has been revoked since I came to this place," Izuku exclaimed, showing the documents that Nezu got for him. All jaws dropped after Izuku spoke. Even Momo herself was speechless. Before she could do or say anything, a hand landed in front of her. "Let's go home, milady," Izuku said with a smile, making Momo's world jump. She took his hand gently. The height difference between them became even more noticeable when she regained her good posture, making Izuku have to look up, but she didn't care. "Lead the way, Izuku." Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was surprised by what had just happened, Izuku and Momo sneaked towards the Hercules, where All Might was waiting for them both. "Well done, young Midoriya. You were amazing," the man exclaimed, returning to his muscular form for brief seconds. "Now let's go back to UA. I'm sure Nezu will have a fun day destroying those who arranged that marriage. I'm sorry for telling them that I'm your son, All Might. I didn't want to cause you problems, but I needed to have a weighty title." "Bah, don't worry about that. I'll take care of everything." As soon as they entered the car, Toshinori surreptitiously closed a screen that separated the rooms inside the vehicle. "Let them have their privacy," the retired hero said to himself with a smile. Since they got into the vehicle, Yaoyorozu had avoided looking at Izuku, but she refused to let go of his arm. The boy, seeing that he would have to be the one to break the ice, mustered up the courage to speak. "Yaoyorozu-san, I'm sorry if I was somehow too direct or offended you in any way," the boy said, moving his arm a little to get his attention. That seemed to work as the young girl blinked a few times before processing what the boy had said. No. You did not do anything wrong. In fact, I'm glad you said all of that. Yaoyorozu-san. The girl's index finger resting on his lips prevented Izuku from finishing his sentence. Bringing his eyes to meet hers, he could see how she was smiling fondly at him. You already poured out your feelings for me, it's only fair that it's my turn now. Izuku, the slight blush on her cheeks and the slight shine in her eyes made Momo even more beautiful in Midoriya's eyes. Momo closed her eyes before speaking, in an attempt to make the embarrassment less. Izuku, I know I didn't have the best opinion of you when we first met, but I really was wrong. You are someone surprising and special to me. From the first moment you treated me as an equal, ignoring my origins or my last name. You saw who I really am, and that is why all those reading sessions with you, those small details that we shared will always be in my memory as some of the most precious memories of my life. And why Yaoyorozu-san, please stop. When the girl opened her eyes she noticed how Izuku was scratching his cheek in embarrassment and his face was completely red. Slowly she also became in the same condition. So, Izuku began when she finally recovered, would you make my selfish wish come true by becoming my girlfriend? Yaoyorozu laughed elegantly upon hearing Midoriya's attempt to resemble the princes and knights of the books she read so much, even so, she appreciated the attempt. No words were necessary to convey her response. With a gentle movement, the girl moved her body until she could join her lips with Izuku's. Neither of them knew how long they were like that, the world seemed to pause and it was only All Might's uncomfortable cough that brought them back to reality. Ahem, while I'm not against it, please, there are places to do that, the hero said somewhat awkwardly. Both young people blushed and nodded slowly before walking towards the bedrooms accompanied by All Might. It was only a few days that the news about the dissolution of the group of the boy's father who tried to buy Yaoyorozu's hand went live. Nezu was certainly scary. Also, in that same period of time, a video of what happened at the gala was made public and Mina projected it at maximum resolution in the common room for everyone to see. Causing both Yaoyorozu and Midoriya to become embarrassed when they heard their classmates' comments. Much to the surprise of Izuku and, frankly, everyone who knew him, All Might actually became Izuku's father by revealing that he had started dating Inko just a few months earlier. Shoto was very happy to hear the news. Later, the next obstacle in their relationship, at least for Izuku, was seeing Momo's parents again after what he said. His body looked like a wet noodle when he was waiting for them at the mansion, and if it weren't for Momo holding him he was sure he would have fallen to the ground. Fortunately, after an intense look from Mr. Yaoyorozu, which stopped when he received a blow to the back of the head from his wife, he was completely accepted. For them, seeing how her daughter reacted upon hearing Midoriya's confession was proof enough. They trusted Momo's judgment and did not feel they had the power to give an opinion after what they had put her through. The years passed and the couple lived thousands of adventures together. Now, happily retired after a life full of action, they could dedicate themselves to watching their son Toshi grow up and enjoying every moment together. It was one day when Toshi gathered them in the living room. They were both scared, wondering what could be the reason why their son wanted to talk to them so seriously. When they heard that he also wanted to enter UA to be a hero, but taking the normal exam, Izuku quickly hugged him and threw him into the air several times like when he was little. So much anxiety only to be filled with pride at the end. After Toshi graduated, Momo and Izuku had a conversation and decided to dust off the old suits. When his son saw them dressed in their costumes again, he almost fainted just like Grandma Inko. The Midoriya family set a precedent, being the first heroic family to act as a group. Their popularity skyrocketed, as they were recognized as old heroes, and the fact that their individual grades were very high was just a bonus for their popularity. Izuku hugged Momo lovingly as Toshi brought his girlfriend home. The girl reminded him a lot of what he was like when she met Momo's parents. Without that letter, this life might not be his, and sometimes that thought terrified him. Momo knew it, and that is why, without him even discovering it, she always gave him the same gift on Valentine's Day. Midoriya was rereading the letter while waiting outside the dorms at sunset. He had left a message in the author's bag and expected her to show up at any moment to give his response to the feelings she expressed in the letter. He was afraid of ruining everything. He was known for being mess and he didn't want to fuck it up like it had 2 years ago with Ran. Her words still ached in his memory. You don't deserve love, Deku. Since that day, he had believed it. He had internalized it in his mind, refusing to think otherwise for a minute. He had even come to doubt of his mother and his unconditional fraternal love, thinking that she was only with him because she couldn't get rid of him in time or because of guilt. After thinking for a long time, he realized that it didn't have to be that way. It hadn't been his fault that he had been born that way, and he wouldn't give up thinking that one day he could have a happy family. You can show yourself, Hagakure. I know you're here, the boy said to the air and then ate one of the mint chocolates. A pair of gloves and boots appeared from behind the wall in front of Izuku. How did you know I was here? What was it that gave me away? Asked the girl. Midoriya pointed to his nose while he smiled. You have a pleasant aroma of vanilla, which if you mix it with the smell of chocolate and mint results in that unique fragrance that the letter has, explained the boy. Did you recognize me just by my smell? The girl exclaimed in shock. No, of course not, the boy denied and then pointed to the invisible girl's right hand. You must have a bandage on your hand since at lunch you complained when Mina hit your hand when she jumped on me. Also, you don't usually wear your gloves outside of your hero outfit. Midoriya, please. The strangest thing, but at the same time what ended up confirming my suspicious, it was the kiss on the back of the letter. You still have a little of lipstick. Stop. Just stop. Please, Toru yelled, with her voice shaking. None of this should have happened. I knew it was a bad idea. I just had to get away from you, but I had to send that piece of crap. Midoriya was silent as he watched his classmate begin to break down. There was nothing he could say or do if she didn't explain what was going on. He wanted to understand her before he could make his decision. I couldn't have endured another rejection, even less if it was you, the girl said as she hugged herself. Not when you've been the only one who, she stoked herself before ending that sentence. Let me see if I understand. You sent me that letter along with the chocolates, dumping all your feelings into them as a last message before you walked away from me. Explicitly asking me not to look for you, because you were afraid of rejection. Toru nodded, forgetting that Izuku couldn't see her, but the boy moved closer to her and gently held her hands. Hagakure, your plan always had a big problem. You forgot that I'm like a stubborn mule. Writing me that letter, describing such a beautiful feeling, and giving me the best mint chocolates I've ever eaten, I couldn't just stand there like an idiot letting a girl with such feelings be left with a broken heart. Slowly, Midoriya released one of the girl's hands and, with amazing precision, caressed one of her cheeks. I see you, Toru. I don't need to know what you look like for your feelings to reach me. Why? She asked with tears rolling down her cheeks. Why choose me when you deserve so much better? Izuku chuckled as he wiped away the invisible girl's tears with a smile. Hey, those words are my trademark, he teased. They say love just happens, you don't choose, right? Staring where he thought Hagakure's eyes were, Midoriya began to blush a little. Well, you're pretty cool too. Your quirk has many applications for heroism and you are an excellent example of heroine. Then even more embarrassed, the green-haired man looked away, and I always loved your adorable personality. Hagakure chuckled as she saw the cool personality Midoriya had go down the drain, just to become the usual nervous wreck. When the boy heard Toru's laugh, he relaxed when he saw that she had calmed down and that everything had gone well. See, Ran, you were wrong after all, he thought proudly as he felt one of his demons fade into oblivion. So, you and me. At the girl's question, Midoriya nodded. I think something is missing for it to be official. The green-haired man blushed, as he understood what she wanted, but leaving behind all his embarrassment, he leaned forward. The two of them joined in a chaste kiss, with Toru bending one leg as she wrapped her arms around Izuku's neck. The kiss lasted for about a minute, which is when they heard a cough near them. Pulling apart slowly, they both turned their heads only to see how all their classmates were in front of them. The couple froze completely at the stares of their friends. I knew it, Mina yelled as she jumped ahead of the group. How long have they been there? Midoriya asked, surprised and embarrassed. Toru just buried her face in the boy's chest, refusing to speak. Since you have a pleasant aroma of vanilla, Kaminari replied sardonically, bringing a massive blush to Izuku's face. It's not our fault that you chose the entrance to the dorms to make your love confession, Ribbit Asui added. I am so happy for both of you. Take care of Deku-kun, Toru-chan. Please, he has the habit of breaking himself a lot. At Uraraka's joke, Izuku exclaimed indignantly, a reply that was completely ignored by everyone. The new couple would be the talk of the entire Class 2A for several weeks, reminiscing about how romantic Midoriya had been. After several years, Izuku Midoriya was struggling to keep his nerves and tears under control. In front of him was the love of his life, wearing a beautiful long white dress with pale pink details. Her veiled face was adorned with a silver tiara that matched the rest of the outfit. They had decided to use a Western wedding style, which had gradually become more popular and Izuku, you're mumbling, his fiancée whispered as she and the guests laughed. I'm sorry. After everyone fell silent, both began to recite their vows. Izuku Midoriya, you have been the only person I have come to love. The intensity of what I feel for you is not something I can ever express to you. Since the day we met at UA, going through the war and your appointment as the symbol of hope, my feelings have only strengthened. She held the ring that Mina handed her and quickly turned to face the green-haired man. I want you to wear this ring as a symbol of our union, from now until death do us apart. Midoriya let Toru slide the gold ring onto his finger as he swallowed a bit. Silent for a few seconds, he turned to take the ring that Todoroki had offered him. Toru Hagakure, years ago I thought I would never find love. That someone like me didn't deserve anyone's time. You taught me otherwise that Valentine's Day. You taught me that not only could someone love me with the passion that you have, but that I could do it too. I don't need to see you to know that I'm marrying the most beautiful woman on the planet, I never needed it. Gently, Izuku held his fiancée's hand and began to feel around the fingers until he found the right one to place the ring. I want you to wear this ring as a symbol of our union, as a token of my unconditional love and support. I promise you, for everything that exists and may exist, that I will not allow anything, even death, to tear us apart. After Midoriya's votes, much of the public was wiping away some treacherous tears. Mina had all of her makeup smeared all over her face as Inko Midoriya was starting to flood the place with all might, trying to wipe away the tears. Now you can kiss the bride. Those words were hardly heard by the two of them. They were both lost in each other. Toru was no better than Inko, since her tears had started to fall incessantly. Izuku reached over and caressed his wife's cheek. This brings back memories, don't you think? She just nodded as she wrapped her arms around Midoriya's neck. The kiss between the two unleashed a wave of applause, cheers and tears from the audience. Their wedding was the most media event of the century after all the events of the war. For the public, their symbol of hope had married a promising young heroine, but for the two of them, they were living the happiest day of their lives and the beginning of their family. Midoriya was resting against the wall of a building while waiting for the letter's author. He was out of UA and it was already getting a little late, but he hoped Aizawa-sensei wouldn't be so harsh on him. Either way, Izuku believed the punishment would be worth it. Hey, Midori, really leaving a letter? You know that text messages exist, right? Ashido exclaimed with a smile on her face as she approached the green-haired boy. Izuku was speechless when he saw her in that satin black dress that had a slight purple sheen in the reflections of the light. Her arms were covered by long white gloves and around her neck was a rather simple silver necklace. Earth to Midoriya. The boy quickly shook his head back to reality and Mina simply laughed at him. What a naughty boy. It's rude to stare at a girl like that. The boy tried to find an excuse, but his embarrassment didn't let him think clearly. Bringing his arms to his face, the boy simply responded, well, you look beautiful. This time it was Ashido's turn to blush, bringing her face to a similar tone to that of her dress, but having a different personality than the green-haired boy, the young woman was able to hide it better and regain her composure. So, what is this that is so important that only I can help you with? All right, let's go inside and you'll see for yourself, answered the boy, suddenly taking Mina's hand. The pink-skinned girl was surprised by his sudden touch, but she made sure to enjoy it as much as she could. As soon as they entered, both teens were greeted by a bunch of other couples similar to them who were gathered in a large room. Ashido looked up a little and noticed a huge sign. Star Dance Contest. The girl read aloud, special prize to the winning couple. She turned to face the young Midoriya, who looked somewhat embarrassed. Isn't this something you should invite Ochako-chan to? Huh? Izuku tilted his head in confusion. Why do you say that? You know, isn't she your crush or something? Uraraka-san and I, the boy repeated before starting to laugh lightly. Nah, she and I are just friends. Besides, you are the best dancer I know. A gleam of hope crossed Ishido's eyes, but before she could say anything else, the lights went out and a spotlight illuminated a person on the stage. Welcome everyone to the 20th edition of the Musudafu Dance Competition. This time we chose a special date to commemorate our anniversary, in addition to rewarding our winning couple with a visit to the Mighty Museum and a deluxe suite at the Almighty Dreams Hotel. So that's why you want to participate in this, Mina whispered to Midoriya, making the boy look away from her, acting as if he hadn't heard her. Dunno what you're talking about. After naming the rules, the couples prepared for when it was their turn. Each one would have an opportunity to deliver a different performance to a couple of songs, and a jury would be in charge of selecting the best of all. Both Ishido and Midoriya were surprised to see the performances of some participants who clearly seemed to be professionals, since they even used their quirks together in perfect synchrony. Both teens swallowed, feeling a little intimidated. I consider myself a good dancer, but I never practiced this style, Midori, said the pink girl, somewhat dazed. It doesn't matter. You already know that I can't dance, the boy responded with a slight laugh. Look, if we get a score greater than 40, I will tell you a secret of mine, about who I like. I know that you are into those things. The girl's bubbly attitude immediately returned and she raised her hands in the air, carrying Midoriya's with her. You said it, so don't regret it later. I know I won't, the green-haired man thought as he began to enter the dance floor, being dragged by his partner after they were called. The song started with a slow beat. They both held their hands and stared at each other as they swayed side by side around the floor. Out of nowhere, the melody sped up along with the band's guitar strums. Both heroes separated and began to hit the ground with their feet while applauding with their hands raised. Izuku held Ishido's waist and the girl arched her back using the green-haired boy as her axis. Then their legs intertwined several times quickly and precisely without either of them stumbling. Their performance was a strange mix. Some in the audience were confused by what they saw: flamenco, tango, and something else. No one could decide what those teens were dancing to. They both held each other's hands again and continued their dance. Their eyes had not strayed even for a second. Izuku was lost in the depths of his dance partner's eyes and certainly didn't regret his decision. The competition prize was the least important thing to him now that he had discovered how he really felt. He needed to find out before doing anything, but after seeing Ishido dressed that way and sharing that dance with her, he could realize how all the interactions he had with the pink-skinned girl were transformed into something else. As his heart began to beat again in a way he never had before, putting that together with the excitement and adrenaline that was coursing through his body could only define what he was feeling as one thing: love. On her side, Ishido was not better either. The girl was a mess in her head, with a lot of contradictory emotions. She had believed that Midoriya was in love with her friend Ochako, and she, like the good friend that she is, had no intention of ruining it. Just look at them. Those two were too adorable together. She almost fell to the ground when Izuku assured her that he didn't like her. Ishido left that letter as a way to mark an end to those impossible ideas and fantasies that had been floating around in her head since Izuku helped her study when she was about to fail math. Aside from Yaomomo, he was one of the few who thought that wasting time on a fool like her was worth it. And now, they were both dancing as if their lives depended on it. Leaving their souls on the track, sharing one of the activities that she loves the most. Next to her, there was that damn angelic smile. Both teenagers began to use their quirks in the middle of the improvised choreography. Ishido manipulated the viscosity of the acid so that a pair of ribbons formed on her arms and began to move them elegantly, while Izuku did something similar with Black Whip and the One for All Sparks. Using one of the tendrils, the boy brought Ishido closer again when the song was ending. He lifted her above his head and using the momentum with float they both ended up in a pose where Izuku held one of the girl's legs and she let herself fall on his arms. They were breathing heavily and blushing from physical exertion, or perhaps it was for something else. The applause was quick to arrive and the couple bowed before leaving the dance floor. When all the performances were over, Izuku and Mina were looking expectantly at the screen to see their score. Unfortunately, their names appeared in third place. Damn, Ashido whispered, still applauding the winners with a smile. I would have liked to see that sweet, but those two were incredible. Izuku remained silent, still with his smile on his face watching the girl. Hey, third place isn't bad either. They both shared a laugh and enjoyed some of the snacks there before heading back to the UA dorms. The sun had already set and they were probably going to receive a reprimand from their sensei. Fortunately, they were given a certificate of participation so the explanations would not be so complicated. The light reflected from the moon created a perfect atmosphere and Izuku was moving a little nervously, which Ashido noticed. I must say, Midori, you definitely surprised me back there. The pink girl exclaimed excitedly while trying to reassure him. And to think that less than a year ago you were dancing worse than a rock. I practiced a little after that, the young man admitted embarrassedly. I thought it would be useful for my shoot style. Well, you were awesome. I wish I could learn that quickly. Silence returned, but not for long. Screw it, the young man thought before finally deciding to act. Ashido-san. The girl raised an eyebrow in confusion when she turned to look at him, but she was surprised by an unexpected kiss on her lips. Despite the initial surprise, the girl immediately linked her arms behind Midoriya's neck and deepened their kiss even further. A thread of saliva broke when they both separated from that kiss due to lack of air. Izuku, blushing to the point of making a tomato look pale, began stuttering an apology. Meanwhile, Mina was like a blueberry covering her mouth with one hand, surprised even by her own actions. I'm really sorry. Without letting the boy continue his storm of muttering, Ashido placed one of his hands on young Midoriya's cheek. Midori, I hope there will be more like that one in the future, she said with an embarrassed smile. I hope so too, Ashido-san. Would you be my girlfriend? Yes, Yasus, of course, the pink-skinned girl exclaimed immediately and went to hug him tightly, but when she tried to lift him up just for her, she failed miserably. What? For someone a bit small, you are definitely heavy. Hey. That was rude, I'm not small. Shish, calm down, I prefer you to be like this. Otherwise I couldn't hug you like this. Izuku froze when Mina hugged him from behind her, making him arch his back to finally put his head between her breasts. Before either of them could do anything else, a man interrupted them. Can someone tell me what are you doing outside at this hour? Aizawa asked with a stern tone. Aizawa-sensei. What a coincidence, Ashido said, sweating coldly from fear, but without letting go of Midoriya. Teenagers, the teacher sighed after reading the atmosphere. You two are going to have a talk with Midnight about responsibility in the morning, the man said before turning around and walking into UA. Izuku and Mina turned pale upon hearing that and immediately ran after him begging for mercy. Despite everything, they were both happy with how everything had turned out. As expected, Mina ended up telling almost all UA students about their relationship and Izuku simply put a hand to his face while the girl smiled embarrassedly at him when he found out. Years passed and the Class A graduated from UA. They all started their own independent careers while others formed groups and the dancing duo of Deku and Pinky would be recognized as one of the best hero couples in history, earning them a lot of fans and respect. Finally, now as a happily married couple, both heroes returned to the same competition they participated in when they were just 15 years old on that Valentine's Day, ready to win that first place. The hours passed and Midoriya tried to live his life normally since he left that letter, but his nerves were driving him crazy. There was something strange about the whole thing. Asui is a direct woman, who likes to say what she thinks even if it ends up embarrassing her, so he couldn't think of any realistic reason why she would ask him not to find her. Maybe she didn't want a possible relationship to interfere with her studies. No, that's dumb. If that were the case they would just have to talk about it and reach an agreement. Was it a challenge or some prank that someone forced her to do? Would it repeat everything again? Midoriya-chan. Even with all the progress he had made as a person, he was still everyone's laughingstock. He should just. Something slimy hit him in the face, bringing him back to reality. When his senses finally returned and he stopped looking like a deer in the headlights of a car, the green-haired young man realized that Asui was in front of him, tilting her head slightly to the side. I'm sorry, Ribbit. I've been here for a while and you couldn't stop murmuring. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed by his bad habit. Did you want to talk to me? Why, yes. Izuku responded, clearing his throat to try to stop his stutter. My mom asked me to buy a gift for a friend at the last minute and I have no idea what to buy. Could you go with me and help me? The green-haired young man put his hands together and lowered his head a little to escape Suyu's inquisitive gaze, thinking that she was angry, but fortunately he heard her giggle. Sure, Ribbit. Although Aizawa-sensei is going to be mad at us if we go out now. It's getting late. Don't worry about it. I already spoke with him and he gave me his permission. Lead the way then, Ribbit. To the girl's surprise, Izuku gently took her hand and began walking. At first she thought it was something strange and unbecoming of Midoriya, but she quickly noticed the atomic blush that made Izuku look like a ripe strawberry. It was those moments that she found so endearing about his person. As that shy and affectionate boy, he was capable of becoming that noble-hearted hero who inspired people and saved her life. She still has nightmares about that moment, even after all the time that had passed and having had a few other near-death experiences, that time at the USJ was forever etched in her memory. Despite that, whenever her nightmares got worse, Izuku appeared at her side to take away her fear, just like what happened in reality. A slight smile graced her lips as Suyu saw Izuku mutter, holding up a couple of vases, wondering which one is the best. He probably had no idea what effect he had on her. Maybe the purple one matches the house. Midoriya-chan, what do you think of this to accompany the vase? The girl asked him, showing him a pretty floral arrangement with some water lily flowers. It's perfect. The boy exclaimed with his eyes shining, delicately taking the flowers. Thank you, Asui-san. Call me Suyu, Ribbit. The green-haired young man laughed lightly before staring into the girl's big eyes. As you wish, Su-chan. She immediately thanked whatever cosmic or divine entity for making Midoriya go straight to pay and ignored Asui's usually stoic face turning into a blushing mess. What was that? The young woman wondered, surprised at Izuku's sudden outburst of bravery that was completely out of place. He was usually too embarrassed to say her name. She had little time to hide how she felt since Midoriya took little time buying the gifts. Do you want to go eat something? The boy asked with a smile after returning to her. I'll pay. Sure. Suyu cursed that little stutter and quickly looked at Izuku to see if he had noticed. Realizing that was not the case, she breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want him to know. Relationships with people with mutant quirks were frowned upon and she didn't want Izuku to be branded a freak or something worse because of her, completely ruining his reputation in the process. He was too good to have to suffer something like that just because of a selfish desire she might have. Even so, it hurt that she couldn't do anything. That's why she sent him the letter and the chocolates, hoping to let him know that she was there and that there would always be someone loving him. Suyu was immersed in her thoughts as she followed Midoriya almost throughout the city. Sometimes he made a fool of himself and they both ended up laughing. Other times she had to stop him since his inner fanboy would activate and he wouldn't stop asking questions to the heroes they found out there. If only it could be a real date. Oh, but it's a date. Asui's dark eyes snapped open and her body froze in place as she heard Midoriya. The boy, who was a little ahead, turned around slowly with a warm smile on his face. Apparently I'm contagious, he said with a mocking tone. You were murmuring for a long time. Midoriya-chan, it's not what you think. Suyu, I appreciate that you care so much about me, but all that doesn't matter to me. Why you don't know what you're saying, Ribbit? That everyone talks behind your back judging how you look and that no one wants to be close to you, it's hell. The green-haired man's arms wrapped her in a warm hug while one of his hands lovingly caressed the back of the girl's neck. Believe me, I know very well what you're talking about, the boy said softly. I haven't told many people, but before I entered UA I was quirkless. I had an extremely late development in the entrance exam. That had to be terrible, Ribbit, the girl with the frog quirk added, her voice being slightly silenced by having her head against the boy's chest. It was. There wasn't a day that he didn't want it all to end, one way or another. Then why? Why do you want to be with me if you know what can happen? Because I'm not going to let other people's opinions control my life again. I want to try it, with you Suyu, not with someone else. Thank you. Izu-chan. The girl's eyes began to water as she looked up. Izuku wrinkled his face at the sight of her, trying to hold back his own urge to cry, but in the end the dam broke and a deluge began to fall. Don't cry, Sue, you'll make me cry too. They both stood crying at the scene, worrying the people passing by, asking if the place was going to flood at that rate. After a few minutes they both managed to calm down and began to walk back to the bedrooms, with Suyu keeping her hug on one of the young man's arms. "You're warm, Ribbit," the girl said with a slight blush, settling down a little more. "I could stay like this for hours." "I'm glad to hear that," Izuku responded with a smile. When they crossed the entrance to the dorms they were greeted by Todoroki, who was staring at them sipping cold soba. "So, how did it go?" asked the bi-colored young man with his characteristic flat tone. Izuku simply gave a thumbs up and winked at his friend, who gave him a smile that was rarely seen on the boy's face before probably retreating to his room. Suyu raised a confused eyebrow looking for an explanation, so Izuku scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. "I may have needed help finding an excuse to ask you out and Shoto had the idea." "You're a fool," the girl said honestly, but then gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. "But now you're my fool." "Why yes, of course." Just as they were both about to separate and go back to their respective rooms, Suyu pulled him towards her looking embarrassed. "Do you want to spend the night together?" she asked him quietly, making Izuku explode in blush. "It's been cold and I can't sleep well." He stuttered for a while before finally nodding his head when he couldn't find the right words. Careful not to be seen, Izuku sneaked into Suyu's room and gently placed the vase on a small coffee table while the girl changed into her pajamas. "Wasn't it a gift for your mom's friend?" "Ribbit," she said, entering the room again. Izuku scratched the back of her neck, somewhat embarrassed at seeing Asui in her pajamas before answering. Actually they are for you. Like I told you, I needed an excuse to ask you out." Suyu's tongue slapped him gently. That wasn't necessary, Ribbit, but thank you," she said, before the girl dragged him to the bed, where they both hugged each other lovingly. They were both embarrassed to the point where neither of them said anything, they were just hugging each other, enjoying each other's company. "Izu-chan, aren't you planning to change your mind?" Ribbit, she asked, still doubting about everything that was happening. "No. You are perfect, Su-chan, never doubt that. No matter what others say, you will always be the best in my eyes," the boy said before kissing the young woman's forehead. "Now sleep peacefully. I'll be here when you wake up." With a smile on her face, Suyu finally let herself be carried away by the warm sensation she felt from Izuku's embrace and closed her eyes so she could sleep. That cold and lonely Valentine's night that she imagined was overshadowed by the warmth of Izuku's arms, and she could never let go of him again. Days passed and they finally made their relationship public to their classmates. Mina and Toru practically jumped on them asking for all the details about their union. Suyu squeezed Izuku's hand when he felt that the young man was acting shy again, and with that simple gesture, Izuku calmed down and began to narrate what had happened on their first date. There were some rumors and some rejection of the relationship between Deku and Froppy from certain extremist groups on both sides, but the general public saw them as one of the main agents of change towards the stigma of mutant quirk users along with Shoji and Koda. Regarding both of their professional careers, there came a point in life when Suyu decided to temporarily retire to raise the children she had with Izuku. She didn't want them to grow up without seeing their parents, so taking advantage of the fact that the salary Deku received was incredible, she was able to opt for that opportunity. Although there were times when she would still go out on patrol with her husband and stop crime, it was only when her children became teenagers that she returned to active duty. And there she was, happily preparing breakfast for her children and husband while she hummed a song. "Whoa, that smells good. Looks like Mom made your favorite," Izuku exclaimed, entering the house through the front door, dressed in his sports clothes. Despite the years, his habit of getting up early to complete his exercise routine did not disappear. Even their children began to imitate him. "Yes," the twins exclaimed behind Izuku, raising their arms excitedly and running to the bathrooms to wipe off the sweat. Her son Takao along with her daughter Chihiro were the greatest blessing Suyu had in her life. She had always dreamed of having her own family, and when she finally achieved it, She was never happier and she owed it all to that smiling idiot of her husband who didn't give up on her and completely ignored the request she wrote in that letter. I love you, Izu-chan, the woman said, using the nickname she used when they were both young, briefly surprising Izuku. The man hugged her from behind lovingly before responding with an angelic smile. I love you too, Su-chan, ribbit, ribbit. As the Midoriyas ate and chatted happily before a new day, in the background, adorning a coffee table in the living room next to a pile of family photos, was a small floral arrangement with water lily flowers. A simple way to never forget what brought them together. Izuku was looking at his phone impatiently. It had been more than half an hour since Uraraka should have arrived. He had made sure he had left the letter in the right place and set the time correctly. So why didn't she appear? The boy continued waiting until the clock struck 10:50 p.m., almost 1 hour past curfew, so he got up from the park bench he had been waiting on and began walking back to the dorms. His gaze was fixed on the ground and his mind was filled with negative thoughts. He had prepared himself so that he could reciprocate Uraraka properly. She was his first friend and always had something for her. He always made excuses saying it was just friendship or maybe a great appreciation for being one of the first people to treat him like a human being, but he was denying the obvious. His heart always jumped when he saw her smile and she talked to him, brightening his days and motivating him to be better. What happened then? I didn't take you as a problematic student, Midoriya. What are you doing outside at this hour? After hearing the distorted voice, the green-haired young man looked up and found the teacher of the rescue class. Oh, 13 sensei, he said dejectedly. I'm sorry, I didn't realize the time. With Midoriya being recognized for being one of the most positive students in all of UA, Anon immediately knew that something was up, so she quickly took off her helmet and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Midoriya, are you okay? The woman asked. I don't know, 13 sensei, Izuku responded hesitantly. I don't want to bother you with. Stop right there, Midoriya. Your problems are not a bother. I am your teacher and above all I am a hero. It is my duty to ensure your well-being, she told him with a smile. Even if it is not with me, you should talk to someone about what is bothering you. Okay, the boy said, nodding his head. The teacher led Izuku to one of the many offices they used for meetings with parents and UA staff. Izuku sat somewhat awkwardly, not knowing exactly what to do. Noticing that, Anon placed her hands on the table and smiled at him. It's okay, Midoriya. I'm not going to force you into anything. You can talk when you feel ready. And no, I don't feel forced. The boy quickly apologized, waving his hands frantically in front of him. It's just that, well, no teacher has ever cared about me before and it feels kind of strange. The heroine raised an eyebrow, confused, and made sure to remember that for the future. Then let me be the one to make the change. You can tell me, Midoriya. I'm not going to judge you whatever it is. Well, do you know what day it is today? Anon nodded, guessing where the matter was going. Midoriya, after getting stuck a couple of times, began to tell the entire story, including Ran and the letter he had received in the morning. In the end, he couldn't hold back her tears. He didn't know if what he felt was frustration, sadness, anger or all of the above, but he let it all out at that moment. It was like someone had broken a dam inside Midoriya himself and he may have let out some secrets that he wasn't supposed to tell. When he finally finished, the boy wiped away his tears and sniffed in an attempt to keep his nose from running. And I don't know what to do anymore. The letter said that she loves me, or at least she did, and I do too. I don't understand why she doesn't want to talk to me. Midoriya, 13 began softly. Feelings will always be a mystery. You can't control them, but they can be hindered. When two people love each other, sometimes there are circumstances that do not allow them to be together. Sometimes they are external, but other times they involve one of the parties. I know, the young man murmured, although my mom tried to hide it. I know that she divorced my dad because of his job. He could barely see us and he thought it wasn't fair to us. Anon nodded slowly before continuing. Maybe Uraraka-san isn't ready for a relationship, or she doesn't want the relationship you both share to change, and that's something you must accept. But it hurts, the boy murmured with his head bowed. People had already played with his feelings twice and he was already beginning to lose hope. It's true, it hurts. I know, the heroine said, reviewing her memory, but you must always move forward, not forgetting but accepting the things that are out of your control and using them to become a better version of yourself. Before continuing, the heroine ruffled the young man's tangled hair and gave him a smile. Being single is not so bad. Just look at me, the woman said jokingly, making the boy let out a light laugh. You're a good boy, Midoriya. This may not have been the occasion, but one day you will find someone who loves you, and it'll work. They both started to get up when the conversation ended, but before they left the office, Izuku turned around and hugged the teacher tightly. Thank you, 13 Sensei, the boy said before releasing the woman. You don't have to thank me, I'm always available if you need to talk. When Anon saw that Izuku had moved far enough away, she let out a big sigh. She was glad she was able to help young Midoriya, but something about that conversation also struck a chord with her. Maybe. Seeing the time and noticing that there was still half an hour before midnight, the woman took out her phone, dialed a number and stood expectantly. A few minutes before, in the dormitories of Class 2A, the girls were looking angrily at Uraraka, who was trying to cover herself with her hands. Gee girls, calm down, the brown-haired girl pleaded. How do you want us to do it? You did something horrible. Ashido shouted angrily. You sent Midori chocolates, got him excited, and then stood him up. Calm down, please. At Yaoyorozu's intervention, Ochako thought that public trial was going to end, but all her illusions ended when she noticed the stern face on the refined woman. I consider you my friend, so I thought you were better than this, Uraraka-san. I'll give you the opportunity to explain your reasons. Seeing that she had no chance of escape and that all the girls could turn against her, the young woman simply sprawled on the chair and began to confess. I'm scared, okay, she said, making everyone raise an eyebrow. Were you scared of Midoriya? Toru asked, confused and completely amazed. No. Well, yes, but not that way. Ochako put her hands on her head and started pulling her hair. I don't know. Part of me wants to go and apologize, tell him I want to be with him and all that, but I also have a responsibility, and I owe it to my parents. I can't let a relationship distract me from my goal. Ochako-chan, I see your point, Asui said, holding one of her friend's shoulders, but what you did was wrong. You played with Izuku-chan's feelings by sending that letter. If your intention was never to reciprocate, then you should have kept it to yourself. But he wasn't supposed to find out, she murmured softly. Girl, sorry to be the one that breaks your own little world, but your ability to lie is shit, Jiro said, crossing her arms, and don't even try to deny it, she added when she saw how the brown-haired girl was going to reply. Everyone except Green noticed your slight crush on him. What can I do now? Uraraka asked, covering her face with her hands, looking completely dejected. The first thing you should do is apologize to Midoriya-kun. Then you have to figure out what you really want with him, because in real life people aren't going to wait forever for you to make a decision, Yaoyorozu said as she left the room. Remember Uraraka, if you take too long someone can get ahead of you and by then you will have already lost him. The black-haired woman closed the door behind her as she left the room. She was angry, yes, but she would be hypocritical if she kept taking it out on Uraraka for what she was feeling at that moment. It was better to go to bed and clear her mind. The next morning, Ochako woke up early since she couldn't sleep well. The image of Midoriya waiting for her couldn't leave her head and guilt was eating her away. As she went to fill her cereal bowl, a familiar head of green hair appeared in the dorm common room. The boy's eyes focused on her and he began to approach. Ochako gulped, nervous about what was going to happen. Uraraka-san. The boy began in a neutral tone, I'm not mad at you for yesterday. I understand you perfectly. Whatever your reasons, I respect them, so I would like us to continue being friends like before, the boy concluded with a smile. Thank you. I would like to continue being your friend, and I'm sorry, Deku-kun. Don't worry, the boy responded with the same smile before continuing with his daily routine. Ochako stood there, with a knot in her chest after hearing those words. That was what she wanted then, why did it hurt? The months passed and these turned into years. The infernal class was having a small meeting as a reunion after so many years. Izuku was excited to see his friends again after his years helping USA heroes reduce the crime rate as compensation and a way to honor Star and Stripe's sacrifice. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by the warm atmosphere that had been his home several years ago. Despite the obvious changes in the appearance of his friends, they remained the same. His gaze focused on Uraraka, who had been subtly glancing at him since they had greeted each other. She had grown up to become a beautiful and strong woman who finally fulfilled her goal of giving her parents a good life. From what Izuku had seen a few days ago, Urabati had been highlighted as the best rescue hero and was a candidate for the 7th place in the hero rankings. The conversation varied from topic to topic until it reached Jiro and Kaminari's engagement, where everyone began to congratulate and toast the couple. "And you, Mr. Symbol of Hope, has someone captured your fragile heart?" Mina asked, sitting on Kirishima's lap being a little drunk. Uraraka, who had stopped paying attention to the conversation a while ago, came back to her senses so she could hear the green-haired boy's response. Well. Izuku was stuttering a little as he tried to find the words. "Do you remember Psycho Intelli?" the green-haired man asked, scratching his blushing cheek. "Oh, don't tell me that it was you." Momo interrupted what she was saying when she saw how Izuku nodded after hiding his face behind his hand. "What a nice surprise. Congratulations, Izuku-kun. Tell Intelli-san that I will go visit her soon." What are you guys talking about?" Uraraka asked, confused. Yes. Tell Midori." Toru exclaimed excitedly, "I hate cliffhangers. Psycho-san was one of the volunteers to help in the United States. We both worked together a couple of times. One thing led to another, and now we are engaged." A knot tightened in Uraraka's stomach when she heard those words, quickly remembering what Yaoyorozu had told her years ago. Her mood was not the same for the rest of the evening, but she managed to hide it well. When everyone was going to another more spacious place to continue with Midoriya, Jiro and Kaminari's bachelor party, she was left alone with Izuku, who was cleaning up some of the mess left by Bakugo and Todoroki after the two started arguing about who had made the most arrests in the year. "So, marriage. You must love her that much, huh?" she said, regretting it the instant the words left her mouth. "Yes, I feel lucky to have met her," Izuku responded with a cheerful smile that quickly diminished its intensity a bit. "I see that you still haven't gotten over what happened." Uraraka lowered her head. "Yes, I'm sorry, Izuku. I was a fool," she said, slowly approaching Izuku to hold one of his arms. "There is no chance that." "No," Midoriya responded sternly, but immediately relaxed. "I love Psycho and I won't leave her for anything in the world. It's been years and I've gotten over what could have happened between us, Ochako." While saying that, Izuku gently patted her on the back while tilting his head indicating a place. "And it's time for you to do the same. You deserve to be happy." Looking where Midoriya had pointed, Ochako saw how Katsuki stumbled and tried to hide the fact that he was eavesdropping by shouting at a ladder step. They both laughed at the blonde as he walked away embarrassed. Then Ochako released the boy's arm, moving away a little in the process. "Thank you, Izuku, for being my friend despite everything that happened. I'm happy for you, really. I won't force you and I understand if you don't want to, but of course I'll go. Just send the invitation to my house," the girl said with a smile. Izuku imitated her and they both began to walk towards where the others were to continue with the party. That may not have been the outcome she expected, but it was the ending she needed in order to move forward. And who knows? Maybe it was not an end but a beginning for a new and even happier stage of her life. The meeting time was approaching and Izuku was running late. Why? You may wonder. Simple. His good friend Todoroki needed help clearing his locker of all the chocolates and letters the UA girls had left behind. He cursed his poor sense of time as he quickened his pace after checking his phone again. What he didn't expect was that as he crossed a corner he collided with someone and fell to the ground hitting his butt. "I'm sorry. Did you get hurt?" the boy asked, offering a hand with the intention of helping his less than victim greater than. To his surprise, when Izuku paid attention to whoever was in front of him, he recognized none other than the person he had to meet. His friend, Ochako. The girl who was the first person to not treat him like a freak. Izuku immediately realized that she was avoiding looking at him, while her face was blushing. Deku-kun. I didn't expect to find you here, she said. Her voice shook with every word, unable to hide her nervousness. I see. The green-haired young man murmured somewhat dejectedly, thinking that after all she had not read the letter he had left her. Were you going somewhere? Yes, there are some very good sales in the store where I usually buy my clothes, answered the brown-haired girl with a tone more appropriate for a question. Izuku raised an eyebrow, suspicious of her words, but he wasn't the one to get involved in her business. He quickly helped the girl up by firmly holding her hands. When they made contact, Izuku felt weird. It wasn't the same shame he felt at the beginning of his first year, it was different, almost like a longing. He didn't want to move away from her touch. Izuku, while helping Shoto organize his locker, had a conversation with his friend regarding his feelings. Yes, choosing Shoto as an advisor was a bizarre choice considering the personality that characterized his friend, but he was the only one who was sure that was not going to tell anything about what they would talk about. Unless they bribed him with cold soba, but that's another topic. He told him everything, from why he didn't like Valentine's Day to the story of the letter. Izuku also told Shoto how he had hesitated while hiding the letter in Uraraka-san's bag. A part of him was afraid of ruining everything, that it had been a mistake to assume that the letter had a romantic meaning and that it was just Uraraka's way to show him her affection as a friend as well as he may be confusing his own affection to Uraraka with love. A firm blow to the back of the head from Shoto cut his rambling. His friend was precise with his words and it only took one question to break down his insecurities and denials. Less than Midoriya, think of a world where you would have never met her. How do you feel about it? Greater than. It was like Shoto broke a barrier in Izuku's brain and everything made sense to him now. The strange sensations in his stomach when she smiled in his direction, how he was always aware of her, frequently observing her in classes and the hero class exercises. And now, he didn't want to let go of her hand. Unfortunately, it seems that was not going to be the time for him. All the courage he mustered flew away at that precise moment. Despite his dreamlike state, Izuku noticed how a white envelope fell from one of his friend's pockets as he helped her up. Without a second thought he bent down to pick it up. The girl next to him felt her jacket and panicked when she noticed that something was missing. Deku-kun, wait. The boy ignored her and picked up the mysterious envelope only to realize that it was the letter that he had left in Ochako's bag. Open. His eyes widened and his mouth dropped in disbelief. He slowly turned to face Ochako and noticed how she was covering her blushing cheeks with her hands in an attempt to assuage her embarrassment. I can explain. She exclaimed to a stunned Izuku, who was still not recovering. I was going to meet you, but my mom called me and. Why are you lying, Uraraka-san? Izuku asked, a bit of pain seeping into his voice and his hand tightening around the letter. Was it all a joke? He didn't want to cry. Not at that moment, but it was in his genes and little by little the tears were threatening to come out, thinking the worst. Ochako's expression did a 180-degree turn, going from almost looking like a tomato to completely pale. Oh, of course not. Well, her mind was working at full speed trying to create a believable excuse, but out of the corner of her eye she saw how Suyu and the rest of the girls alongside Todoroki, who were barely hidden by some bushes, gave her a thumbs up. The hell with it. She didn't want to see Deku-kun sad, much less because of her. She quickly approached the boy and hugged him tightly. Everything is true. The letter, the chocolates, fixing her eyes on Izuku's, a smile adorned the girl's blushing face. I love you, Deku-kun. Since you saved me from 0-pointer on the entrance exam I haven't been able to get you out of my heart. Before continuing, Ochako took Izuku's hands, placing one right where her heart was and bringing the other to her cheek. You have been my inspiration. Izuku, since I met you my life has improved and I began to feel things that I thought were impossible. I was afraid that confessing this to you would ruin our friendship, but I couldn't take it anymore. Slowly, they both brought their faces closer and pressed their foreheads together. I'll say it again, I love you Izuku Midoriya. After that, Ochako closed the distance between them with a kiss on Izuku's lips. He was completely stunned, but in the middle of the kiss he regained his senses after assimilating everything he heard. His hand caressed Uraraka's flushed cheek as they both continued the kiss, completely ignoring the surroundings. His fear and that anxiety he began to feel moments before had disappeared with just 2 words. When they separated, they both put their foreheads together again. Ochako closed her eyes, waiting for what Izuku was going to say, but when she felt that the boy's hand had not stopped caressing her cheek, she slowly opened her eyes and noticed how he was smiling at her fondly. I love you too, Ochako, the boy said with tears threatening to escape his eyes, and Uraraka was no better. You were the first. My friend. My confidant. I really can't say exactly how important you are to me. In the end, the tears won and began to slide down both of their faces just as they joined their hands again. I was afraid too. I never believed I deserved to be loved, but if you are willing, I would like to try. The two teenagers shared an affectionate hug full of tears along with another kiss that only ended up confirming the obvious. Yes, someone exclaimed, scaring the couple, we did it, girls. Turning their heads, the couple saw how Mina had jumped out of the bush where the others and Todoroki were hiding. Were you there this whole time? Izuku asked, blushing to a point where it must have been unhealthy. You too, Todoroki. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Hagakure said, clasping her hands in front of her as she swayed her body a little. It almost looked like something out of a movie. Indeed, your confession will undoubtedly inspire some books or movies, Yaoyorozu commented, placing a hand on her chin as she nodded. Did you record everything, Asui-san? The frog girl waved her hand in confirmation and put a camera in her bag. That wasn't the deal. You were supposed to leave and give us privacy. I never agreed for you to hide in a bush, Uraraka exclaimed somewhat angrily. You knew they were there? Izuku asked with her voice going up a couple of octaves. Maybe all of this was their idea and, well, yes, the girl responded, covering her face in shame, forgetting that in that way she activated her quirk, so Izuku had to quickly jump to hold her leg and thus prevent her from floating away. Listening to his friend's comments, a part of him stopped feeling ashamed of the whole situation. He was where he belonged, surrounded by people who loved him, and he wouldn't change that for the world. Carrying Uraraka as if she were a balloon after she refused to come down, Izuku and company began walking back to the dorms to celebrate the union of the newest couple in the class. The years have passed since that Valentine's Day. Many things happened in his last days at UA, and now Detective Midoriya was finishing writing a witness testimony of a case he was working on alongside his mentor, Tsukauchi. In his last year at UA, a group of straggler cells from the League of Villains attempted an attack on the hero schools again. Izuku was forced to fight with all his might against a Nomu who had a copy of Decay and other quirks that empowered him to the point of resembling All for One in Berserker mode. In that fight, Izuku forced One for All to the maximum, which led him to consume all the energy accumulated in the quirk in order to defeat that beast. Unfortunately, the cost was both of the young hero's arms, but he had managed to save everyone he could. Those were difficult months for him after learning that One for All was almost useless and that his body was in an unviable state to continue being a hero. If it weren't for Ochako by his side, he probably would have gone back to the way he was before. However, his friends helped him in rehabilitation, and Momo, Hatsume and Melissa gave him a pair of prosthetics so he could go back to do things on his own. Detective Midoriya, what a surprise to find you here. Upon hearing that characteristic voice, he quickly raised his head. There was the love of his life, Ochako Uraraka, in her latest hero outfit. Uravity, I didn't know that your patrol brought you to this place, Izuku responded, putting his notebook in a bag that she had given him on one of their many courtship anniversaries. Well, it just happens that a certain rather handsome detective forgot the lunch his lovely girlfriend made. Sure enough, in the woman's hands was a box wrapped in a brown tablecloth with the kanji for green tea written on it. Midoriya smiled fondly before carefully taking the box. Thank you, you're the best, Izuku said, kissing the heroine's cheek, causing the woman to blush massively. You'd think they'd gotten past the stage of being nervous about public displays of affection, but they weren't like normal people in that area. Even in her late 20s, Uraraka still turned into a blushing mess, and Izuku loved seeing her like that. Stop. His girlfriend scolded. God, you really like giving the media material to make articles about us. The detective shrugged his shoulders. I know several journalists who owe me a favor. I'm sure they will prevent those articles from coming to light. She pouted as she crossed her arms. You're mean, Deku-kun, she said, placing a hand on Izuku's, feeling the cold touch of the metal. Remember that the meeting at Yaomomo's mansion is going to be this afternoon. Don't take on more work than your share. Izuku nodded his head slowly before focusing his gaze on her. They both looked at each other about to kiss again and slowly began to bring their faces closer. An explosion on another street interrupted them, causing them to return to professional mode. Uraraka closed her visor by pressing a button on the side of her helmet and, before floating away, she listened how Izuku transformed the prosthetics into something more appropriate for hero work with a simple movement after rolling up his shirt sleeves. I've got your back, Uravati, the young man said with a smile like the ones he had when he fought alongside her as the hero Deku. As I always will. The heroine smiled fondly mixed with some nostalgia and they both began to run towards the site of the explosion. Fate may not have wanted them to be heroes together, but they will never stop watching each other's backs. The bond they had was strong and there was nothing that could break it. In the middle of the run, Izuku couldn't stop thinking about that small velvety box that was kept hidden in his bag every time he looked at his girlfriend. That night, that same Valentine's Day, he would take the first step this time. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.